Hello everyone. Hope you're doing good today. Can all hear me clearly? Yep, great. So I've been holding this talk probably 20 times now, and I've tried this time to make the title even more clickbaity, because one of the feedbacks that I got from the previous talks was that, okay, it was called Patents for Entrepreneurs, because that's really what it is. But what you learn during these 20 minutes is basically how not to waste money like I did. So if I had known what I know today, I would have saved roughly 5 million euros. It's a large amount of money, but it is what I would have saved during my 20-year career as a deep tech founder. So my background is as a physicist, spent the last 20 years building 3 different deep tech companies, but mainly one that was quite successful, scaled it up to 40 million euro revenue, 90% worldwide market share. And we're basically in every single classroom in the Western world and most of the developing world. Every day, 300 million students use the systems that Flatfrog provide the technology for. This is based on 15 years as a deep tech CTO. We filed roughly 330 patents during that time to not get copied, and we still got copied. But the thing with patents is that you need to have a professional that's on your side, on your specific technology at all sides. So this is pure experience-based, what you'll hear here today. We focused on a combination of hardware and firmware. So we built hardware, but like the secret sauce was really in the firmware and the software that was running inside. And we had a budget-limited IP portfolio. And you can wonder, so you spent $20 million in total, how is that budget limited? Well, it was budget limited compared to the people we were trying to compete against who had almost unlimited budgets. Like going up against Samsung, for example, we had a tiny, tiny budget compared to what their legal department had. So we had to think smart, in smart ways to be able to compete. But we did successfully license this, and as I said, it's now licensed to close to 90% of the world market. This is my experience with patents over the last 20 years. It's an extremely frustrating thing for a deep tech founder. You're trying to move fast, you're trying to move efficiently, and against you is a system that just isn't intended for that. It's really built for very large companies with very big budgets and very long projects, etc. But it took me about 10 years to go from the denial stage through the anger stage when I got my big attorney bills into the, okay, this isn't really working, up to the, okay, now I can actually play the game of patents. Luckily, I spent most of my youth in basements being a dungeon master. So I learned about playing games quite early, and as soon as I figured out that patents were a game, it was much easier to kind of deal with it, because there are rules and there are prizes, you do stuff to win, and if you make the wrong place, you lose, and you lose a lot of money. So the one thing that a lot of deep tech founders get wrong is that they think that it's all about the technology when they come to protecting their technology, but it's really not. The first thing is about the team, because unless you have people on your team that can invent things and act accordingly fast enough, it doesn't matter how much you file a patent or think that you're protected, because you will not actually be able to make it good enough and make the technology good enough. The second thing, which is, I made it bigger here for a reason, it's probably the most important thing about patents, your total addressable market. Because if you're a company that's targeting a 10 million euro market, you should probably not be spending very much on patents, because you're in a niche market. If you, like us, were targeting a $3 billion market, yes, then you need to spend a lot more money. And especially when you do pivots between markets, you might be previously working on a very large market, and then you go into a smaller market, and you keep the legacy like protection, assuming that nothing changes. But it does change. So basically, you need to do your TAM reality check every time you're considering what you should be protecting. And last comes the technology, because without technology there's no point in protecting anything. You actually need to have something new. Why would you otherwise spend money on it? When you play a game, there's always a price, and this is the price of potentially winning with patents. There's a Harvard study of over 35,000 startups showing that you get almost 80% sales increase over the coming 5 years and almost 50% increase in getting funding. So why do you get these benefits? People like risk reduction. And that's what patent is all about. VCs like risk reduction. They like knowing that no one can go and copy your company. Customers, especially large ones, like risk reduction. So when you're selling to a large company, they want to be able to make sure that they don't make the wrong decision. And if you have a patent technology that they can't get anywhere else, it's more likely to win that customer. It might sound a little bit strange, but that's just the fact it is. And having patent pending on your product is quite common in the consumer market because it sets like, oh, this is a premium product, whereas it might just be new. A lot of deep tech founders is looking for fundraising. Almost 60% of all venture capital went to companies with patents, and this includes the software startups. So for deep tech companies, it's more like a hygiene factor to have it properly covered. And why do VCs like it so much? Well, it's for two reasons. If and when someone copies you, because they will do if your market is attractive enough, you have a way of fighting back. The second one that is probably not as apparent for founders is that if the team fails, which is typically the most common thing for a deep tech company to fail in, there's actually assets left in the company that they can either restart with a new team or sell off. When you go to valuation and exit, it's just higher. And this is just statistics. This is from 2023 pitch book. So now you know why you're playing, and you need to know some basic rules. I will be hosting a workshop this afternoon if you want to dig into the details, because this takes longer than the 11 minutes I have left. But basically, there are only a few things that you need to know. And this is basically the thing that you need to know. It fits on a single slide what a deep tech founder needs to know. You need to know that they're a negative right. Like having a patent doesn't mean that you can actually sell your product. You need to know that you can't disclose stuff and then patent it. You need to know that there's a gap of 18 months where the whole thing is secret. But there's only a limited amount of things that you actually need to know. The rest you can leave to the experts. But if you don't know the basics, you're going to fail on the business side. Going into the advanced stuff, and I'll go through this afternoon in the workshop, there are so many things on how you can play the game. Specifically, a patent is not a dead thing. It lives until it's granted. And one of the most successful ways that I've been using this is essentially to file what's called a continuation and keeping the patent alive while my competitors were developing products and rewriting the patents onto their products. So the people that file a patent and leave it in the drawer, they're making the biggest mistakes of their life, and a very, very expensive mistake. Problems are great news, because what is a patent? It's a solution to a problem. And one of the things that a lot of people mistake patent for is they think that it has to be something revolutionary. You have to have invented graphene or the next quantum bit, whatever. That is not the case. A patent is protecting a problem that you solved. And the more simple the solution, but you're not allowed to say simple to patent attorneys because they will become very angry. So I've started saying elegant instead. The more elegant your solution is, the better the patent is. Because in the end, as I'll talk about a little bit later, you might have to go to court, and you're not going to be defending your technology in front of a PhD in your field. You're going to be defending it to laymen who needs to understand stuff. So the more basic you can make your protection, the better. Our absolute best patent was one where we could, on the displays that we were delivering, we could go up with a simple ruler and push it against the screen and tell if a competitor was infringing our patent or not. And we did that in the courtroom, super effective. If you have to explain to someone how an algorithm works or how a certain thing is combined, you've lost half of your jury members already. And you are not alone, and this is one of the things that I made a big mistake of thinking. When we started out, we thought we were ahead. And this 18-month silent period I talked to you about, that is, when you learn it, you will realize how scary it is, because you basically don't know what's out there until 18 months after. So I had this like epiphany after watching a TED talk, and that's what led to the first company. And I spent like 3 months trying to get the patent perfect and making sure we covered everything. And then 17 months and 3 weeks after we filed our patents, a single student from Buenos Aires had filed the same thing 3 weeks before us. And he had filed a pretty crappy patent, but it completely destroyed ours. So if we had spent a little bit less time like focusing on the final wording and more of like getting everything in there, it would have saved us so much money. This is probably the biggest saving, like reducing the amount of time until you actually have your patent filing in. If I could redo it all over again, that's probably the biggest saving that I would make. Because once you start getting it into a competitive field, people come up with the same things. There is the same amount of technology available all over most of the world, and there's smart people, and they will figure out the same things that you have. And in patents, there are no second places. If you're just 1 day ahead, you get everything, and they get nothing, and the opposite. And this comes back to, why do you need to care about farmers in Texas? Because you as a Western company, you're most likely to be copied by an Asian company. And when that happens, you will want to bring them to court in Texas. Why? Because Texans don't like Asians. And they have a very favorable legal system towards tech companies. So this is where you go. The only problem is that when you select the jury, there's only farmers in Texas. So basically you have to explain your technology to farmers. And this is why it's again so important to pick the things that are really clear and elegant when you decide to patent something. Talk quickly about strategy. More of this will come in the afternoon. If you're interested in deep diving into it, it will be an interactive session where you can ask questions. The first thing you should ask yourself, why am I patenting? It's like, if you are patenting without knowing why, then you're probably doing something wrong. There are basically two different things that you can build with patents. You can build a licensing portfolio, and that means that you're not intending to build the product yourself. You're intending for other people to build your product. Or you can build a defensive portfolio, which is when you're building your own product and you don't want anyone else to build it. And those are vastly different. If you're trying to build a licensing portfolio but spending as a defensive portfolio, you will probably lose. And if you're building a defensive portfolio and you're spending as a licensing model, then you're going to waste a lot of money that you could have spent on developing the product instead. And early on, you're likely only patenting for investment. So make sure that your patents are investor-friendly in the beginning. Later on, it will be towards maybe an exit or maybe towards customers, and they will look different, and you need to think differently. The most common mistake that I see from founders that I coach is that they don't make a budget for patents. They just take it as it comes. And if you went to your board and said, we're not going to make a budget for our R&D project, they would probably throw you out. And yet, still most people don't budget their patents. While for a deep tech company, it's quite often that the patent cost is 5 to 10% of your entire spend, especially if you're building a license portfolio. And you need to make conscious decisions. You need to, importantly, balance trade secrets versus patents. Because if you're patenting everything that you're developing, you're basically showing the world how it's done, and you have no secrets left. And they are sure to find a way around it. So I used to kind of if you have all of these problems that you've solved, let's say that you've solved 20 problems. If you're patenting more than 10 of them, then you're probably doing something seriously wrong. You need to keep stuff secret, because otherwise people can just go in and copy you. And the more you show to the world about your secret sauce, the easier it will be for them to basically go around you and build something better. When you execute, you need to be aware that there are different levels of patents. You can go all the way from the concept patent, which is typically the one you file when you want an investment, all the way down to a component patent, which is like an inside of your product that you figured out you maybe can use in other products as well. And these are completely different. And if you're treating them as one and the same, again, you're losing a lot of money. Because it's like trying to use a hammer for everything when there's a lot of screws out there. So you need to figure out exactly how and what you're patenting. And the second thing where I've lost most money is focusing too much on the core. You have a certain thing that you do better than everyone else. And if you're spending all of your money protecting just that, then you are most likely going to lose a lot of money. Because there might be ways of doing it slightly differently that is still not as cost efficient, not as good, but good enough for a lot of customers. And if you're not protecting those fields, you're basically showing competitors, this is how you build a premium product, now go take the main market. That happened to us in a certain segment, and it's a mistake I will never make again. So you need to spread your resources, and you need to remember that it's not the thing that you think is the most important that is likely going to be your most important protection. So you need to hedge your bets. It's a game, so you need to put a lot of bets and then evaluate over time and take back the ones that don't play out in a good way. If there's one advice I want to give to everyone, is that don't patent algorithms. Because there are thousands of algorithms, and you will never convince the farmer that this algorithm and this algorithm that looks different are actually the same. It's almost impossible. And it might feel good to patent an algorithm, but in the end, you're basically just showing the world how it's done. So make sure that you patent stuff that you can actually see on the end product. Don't patent things that you cannot analyze on the competitor product. If you can take the competitor product, tear it apart, or do an microscope analysis of it, if you can see on the product that they're actually copying, then you need to patent it, because they will do the same. As soon as your product is out, they will take that product apart and try to copy it. Thank you very much.